That's good. Okay. Firstly, Erev Tov. Thank you, everybody, for venturing out on what is a wintry evening in Israel, which is not quite the wintry evening that we're used to. Just spoke to my daughter in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. What was the temperature over there? 20 degrees, 25 degrees. I mean, and that's what. They're centigrade. No, they're centigrade. We're Fahrenheit. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole difference. But whatever, it is what it is. We're coming to the end of Sefer Shoftim, which is really exciting. I'm not sure whether you make a siyum on finishing a book of Tanakh, but any excuse for a binge is always a good excuse. So maybe we'll think about that. Just to before we start, just the Luach Zmanim, just to say, in 2 weeks' time is Hanukkah, so I think we won't be convening because I'm sure everyone's got prior engagements. It's almost, I think it's the last night of Hanukkah or the 7th night of Hanukkah. So we're back again in 4 weeks' time, which is January the 7th. I think it's January the 7th, if I'm not mistaken. So there will be a break in 2 weeks' time. Sorry? January 7th through. Sorry? January 31st. No, not January 31st. The 14th, excuse me, it's January the 14th. You're absolutely right, January the 14th. So that will be the next, and that will be, I'm going to try and finish Sefer Shoftim on January the 14th. Pelegesh Begivah, I don't want to spend too much time on that because if you're feeling depressed before you got here, then this will finish you off completely. I want to get back to the high ground, not the low ground. But those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Today we're looking at chapters 16 and 17, and it defies imagination. Pesel Micha. Pesel Micha, maybe a phrase that one's heard before. The image of Micha. So we've got a number of things that we have to define. Number one, who's Micha? Number two, what is he talking about, an image? Number three, what is going on? More to the point, what has happened to the book of Judges? Till now, it's always been the highs and lows. We had the highs of Otniel ben Kenaz, and then we had the highs of Devorah, and all that. We went through until Shimshon, who we saw the final destruction of the Plishtim, as it were, or certainly his contribution. But at the same time, unfortunately, he also was killed in action, as we say. But now we're doing the last 4 chapters, 17 through 21, and there's no characters. Well, there is Micha, but he's not a judge. He's not someone that is going to come along and say he's a shofet for better or for worse. And we have to understand there's 2 essential stories at the end of the book. What are they doing here? Right? The style of the book is very, very interesting, that it does go through the characters, and we've tried to analyze them and give a psychological, if that's the way to describe it, bit of a psychological background to who we're studying. Now we're going into what can only be described as Maisalach, right? If you want to call it that. Stories. And the stories here are not easy stories to deal with. And there's a massive discussion, which I'm not going to go into. If you look at the commentaries, Rashi and the other commentaries, when did these stories take place? Did it take place at the beginning of the period of Judges or at the end of the period of Judges? By the chronology of what we're seeing here in chapter 17 of the book of Judges, it would suggest it's at the end of the period. And there's a lot of toing and froing, because some say there's proof to say that it was at the beginning, some at the end. When I taught this in 10, 12 years ago in New York, my argument was very simple, that it doesn't really matter when it took place, because it's not about the timing, it's about the event. The events of the last 2 stories in the book of Judges are Shmuel's final comment about the period of the book of Judges. Why did we have such a turbulent period of nearly 400 years? It's amazing. Book of Shoftim, book of Yoshua, 28 years. And we know what's going on from beginning to end. And it's all clear to us. 400 years of the book of almost 400 years of the book of Judges, and it's a balagan. It's a total balagan from the beginning. And it's very difficult for us to understand, not so much the leadership, which we've spent a lot of time talking about, but the rank and file. What were the people? How were the people behaving? Why did it get to a point where we're going to see the beginning of the book of Shmuel, Mitzvah Shem, when we get there, that the people are craving for a new style of leadership? Not quite at the beginning, but certainly by chapter 8 of the book of Shmuel Aleph, they're looking for a king. They're looking for something different. So what's going on? What is happening here? And you'll see that Shmuel, when he wrote the book of Judges, had comments to make. Please just grab the door. He had some comments to make, which were really, really important. Hi, good evening, Erev Tov. Good evening, Erev Tov. I hope there's enough chairs. Have we got enough seats there? Yeah, there's one seat. Do we need one more or one short? Mark, there's in the back there's chairs and whatever. Okay, let's say that. At least it won't be cool in here. Good evening. All right, we're just looking at chapter 17 of the book of Judges. We're ending the book of Judges. It's a good time to come in, but to tell you the truth, these stories stand on their own, so it's not so difficult to join in at this point. But it is difficult in terms of where exactly we're placing these stories. As I was just saying, some say that the stories happen at the beginning of the period of Judges, some say it's at the end. So there's a bit of a difference, about a 400-year difference between, in terms of interpretation, when the story took place. The story of Pesach Micha is truly bizarre. It's a story which will remind you, when we go through this, which hopefully we'll do already, we'll start in just 1 minute. It's a story which will remind you a lot of the Egel HaZahav, the story of the golden calf. And the golden calf, by definition, was a disaster, even though we know it was limited and it was a Erev Rav and a lot of the commentary about it. But it defies the imagination. What was the mindset of the people that after, literally a few weeks after receiving the Torah, they go and worship a golden calf? It defies our imagination, and so many commentaries about that. The story here of the Pesach Micha, the image of Micha, is going to have overtones from that particular story, and it's going to give us a very big challenge of trying to understand the mindset of the people at that particular time. So that's all I'm going to say by the way of introduction. We're going to go through the Psukim. I'm going to share with you a little bit. I didn't hand out print out this printout because it's very long that I have on this, but I want to just take 1 or 2 points at the end to try and embellish what we're saying. Again, if you haven't got the book in front of you, sefaria.org, online in your phone, SCFARIA.org, and it will come up Tanakh, and then you click on Tanakh or press on Tanakh, and you'll get the book of Judges. So you have access to it if you haven't got the book with you. And listen to this. Here comes a really unbelievable story. Chapter 17. This is Shimshon has gone. Everything now seems to fall. We're in free fall, and this is where we're going. Listen to this. Chapter 17. Vayish meha Ephraim u'shmo Michaya. Right, once upon a time. Okay, a good way to start a story. There was a man from the Mount of Ephraim, and his name was Michaya, so he's known as Micha. Vayomer le'ima. And here he is, and he's having a conversation with his mum, right? Jewish mother. So fine, everything's fine. And what did he say to her? Elef u'mea hakesef asher lukach lach. And he said to her, I know that you're missing a large sum of money, 1,100 pieces of silver. The rabbis say that in the story of Delilah, which we read a few weeks ago, Delilah was rewarded with 1,100 pieces of silver from the Plishtim. So they say that this man is talking here to Delilah. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me at all. It doesn't even work. Just because it's 1,100, the same amount of money, it doesn't mean that that's the same person. But some of the Mepharshim want to say there's no such thing as a coincidence. But say that. Let's assume it's not Delilah. And she's over here, and what's happening? She's missing the money. And he says, Va'ata holit. And this is an unbelievable story. He says, you gave a curse, anyone who took the money. V'gam omar ba'oznai. And I heard you cursing out whoever took the money. And here I am, and I'm going to own up. I'm going to be a good boy. Hinei hakesev iti. Here's the geld, here's the money. Ani lekachti. I took it. Unbelievable. So what did she say to him? Baruch b'ni Lashem. Thanks God. You're a good boy, right? You know, you're blessed in the eyes of the Lord for what you did. This is so odd, and it gets more strange as we go along. He's going to give back the money. So what did he do? Vayoshen et elef umea kesef. So this is verse 3. He gave back the 1,100 pieces of silver le'imo to his mum, right? And she's very happy. But so she says, oh, wait a minute. I have dedicated, made holy the money to God. Miodi libni, from my hand, my son. Lasot pesel u'maseicha. This is where the red flag starts flying. I made a promise to make an image. Pesel u'maseicha, the same language that in the Ten Commandments, commandment number 2, lo tasa lecha kol pesel kol maseh, exactly the same language. You're not supposed to make these things. And she has dedicated the money to make an image. What does it call it here? A graven image. So what will happen is that you give me back the money, I will return whatever the odef, the change that is left after making the image, and I'll give it back to you. You can have the money. So this is very, very strange. She is making an image, a graven image for God. She says, I'm doing it Lashem, for the sake of God. And as I said, you got here already the overtones of the story of the golden calf. So let's see what happened. Vayoshev at kesav liimo, gave her back the money, right? A bag of coins, I presume. Vatikach imo matayim kesav, so she took 200 pieces of silver out of the 1100. Vatidneu letzorev, and she went down to the tzorev, to the local, the graven image guy, the guy who makes these images. Who knew? And he makes this graven image that she wants him to make. And it was put into the house of Micha. What is going on? And it gets worse. Micha, and this man Micha, whose house the woman had put the image into, lo base Elohim, and this is not to be read as a name of God with a big G, but it's the name of God with a small g. It went into his house of idolatry. He had a house of Avodah Zarah. Unbelievable. And he had all the appurtenances of idolatry, and ephod, and the trophim are like mannequins. They used to use these images, as it were, to do whatever they did, shafim or whatever they were doing. Amazing. But remember, she dedicated the money, Lashem, to God, to Hashem. And yet it's being used in this house of Micha. It's that, as you say in Yiddish, mekenish tanzen of zwei chasnas. He's trying to dance at two weddings here. It doesn't make sense to me. And not only has Micha got this whole apparatus going, but he's also got a Kohen, he's got a priest to run the whole show. Pella. And it goes on, it gets worse. Vav b'yomim hahem. And this is the refrain, which we're going to have again and again and again. Shmuel HaNavi, I think, as you say in parentheses, is adding his own comment, and this is the overview of the whole period of Judges. Vayomim hahem ein melech b'Yisrael. There's no king in Israel. Nobody is running the show. Ish hayashar be'inav yaseh. Everyone was doing what he thought was right in his own eyes. This is a phrase, I think, which has come into the modern Hebrew in a big way. Everybody, thinks they're correct. They do what is right in their eyes, and this is what's going on in those days. And Shmuel, in brackets, is sort of going to tell us, and you'll see the next story as well. This is the refrain that comes up again and again and again. Everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. So this woman thinks that by dedicating the money to make a graven image, to put in the house of Micha, this is a way of connecting to God. Unbelievable. And to us, it's so foreign and it's so wrong. It's very hard to get even into the mindset of people who thought that they could do this. The shame shamayim. They're doing it for the sake of heaven. So hold that thought, because we're going to come back to it. And he goes on. In the meantime, right, this is split screen. So on the one hand, we've got the story of Micha and the house and of idolatry and everything that's going on. And the other side of the screen, we're going to hear about this young man from Beit Lechem Yudah. So he's coming from Bethlehem. Mishpachat Yehuda, from the family of Yehuda. Vahu Levi. He's a Levi. So they say his mother was of the tribe Yehuda and his father was a Levi. And this is going to, if you haven't been shocked till now by what's going on, this will really finish you off. I think Rhonda knows what I'm going to say. Vahu Gar Sham. And he was living in Beit Lechem. Who is this guy? Who is this young man? I'm just going to trip to the end of chapter 18. And this will really blow your mind. He's going to be the Kohen in the house of Micha. And who is he? It says at the end of chapter 18, verse 30, V'yakimu lahem b'nei Dan et ha'pesel. They established this pesel. In fact, they took it right to the north of Israel, where Prime Minister was hanging out today in that area, sort of up the Chermon over there. V'Yonatan, his name was Jonathan, ben Gershom. Gershom is a name I know. That's the son of Moshe. Ben, and it says Menashe with an extra nun. And the nun is elevated, it's raised, right? It's a sophist trick. You put it in, but you either make it small or you raise it or whatever. It turns out the leader of this whole story, the Kohen, who's going to do all the, I'm going to call it avoda, but I don't know what else you can call it. All of the what was going on in the house of Micha was none other than the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu. Go figure. It's very hard to. I remember having this discussion at YU with the students and talking about, there was a very famous Chavira Knesset, whose name escapes me, but her grandfather was a Rosh Yeshiva. He was a very famous Rosh Yeshiva in Poland, and the granddaughter was one of the Chavira Knesset in the party which was about as anti-religious as it got at the beginning of the State of Israel. And that's saying something, everything that was trying to be established for the religious population, she was fighting tooth and nail. And her grandfather was a great Rosh Yeshiva. There's no guarantees. You've got a Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest Jew ever lived, and he's got a grandson who's going to be around for a very long time. He has tremendous longevity. And not only that, but he is the leader of the Pesel Micha, the image of Micha, the whole story. He's the Kohen who's going to run the show. Unbelievable. And, again, I throw that out there as a question because, to call him Dat Lush, as they do today, I think is a little bit of an understatement. There is an explanation. Gershon, one of the sons of Moshe, was actually farmed out to Yisro, according to the Midrash, if you go with the Midrash explanation. So if he grew up in the house of Yitro, Gershon, then the son of Gershon, Yonatan, his major influence was not Moshe the Zayda, but it was the other Zayda being Yitro, right? And maybe that explains why Yonatan had a kind of different view of the world. Yitro was the guy who tried every religion in existence, right? We know a bit about his background. But to say that he would lead a rebellion in this way of the image of Micha is truly amazing, truly amazing. We're going to go back to the text. I really want to get through this, so we'll see how it runs. So this guy turns up, this young man, Pasuk Chet, he's looking for a place to live, right? He's in Israel trying to find a dira, an apartment. Sorry, that he can afford. That's a little addition, which is very, very correct, even in those days. And he goes and he finds the house of Micha Lasot Dacho on his way. So he obviously there's a big sign outside, all travelers welcome, etc. It's a bit like the my favorite shul opposite Machne Yehuda, which everybody misses. There's a shul there called Zorei Chama, big sundial there, if you know what shul I'm referring to. And that used to be the first shul that you came to when you came into Yerushalayim. And they had beds upstairs. It was achnosus orchim. For all the travelers that came in, they always knew there would be somewhere overnight that they could stay on their journey on the way to wherever they were going from there. And this was really, again, very Jewish history of Yerushalayim. It's really something special. Again, Beit Micha, in terms of chesed, this guy Micha was very, very, positive. You'll see he really understood the concept of chesed. What he didn't seem to understand is the concept of believing in one God. That was a bit of a challenge for him, as we'll see. Listen to this, verse 9. So Micha said, where are you coming from, young man? He says, I'm a Levite, you're very proud. I'm looking for a place to live. Younger man, I've got exactly the right place for you. Here we are. We're in, you can see my home over here. I'm happy to offer you a room. And we'll make a deal. You won't even have to pay me rent. All you got to do is run the show. You'll be the Kohen, you'll be the priest. After the Kohen, you'll be in charge. Absolutely in charge. I'll even pay you. I'll pay you. You'll get 10 pieces of silver yamim, it says, for a period, maybe a year or whatever. It seems to be a decent salary. The erech begadim, and you'll get some nice new clothes, and michiyatecha, and I'll even go to Yochananov and give you, your food for the week. V'yelech halevi, and he couldn't. It was an offer that he could not refuse. He went. This is Levi, and of course the name is not really revealed to us to the end. So once you look at the end and realize who this young man is, and it really is truly bizarre, amazing. Pasuk Yud Aleph. V'yol Levi l'shevet et ha'ish, and he stayed with Micha. V'yihi hanar lo kachab mipanav, and he became part of the family. Beautiful. And it seems to be all good, except what's going on in the house of Micha. Vayimalei Micha et yad Levi v'yilo hanar l'kohen, and he was brought into the house, and he became the priest of the whole cult, or whatever you want to call it. Vayihi bebeit Micha, and he was there, and he's a fixture in the house. Vayomer Micha atah yodati ki hitiv Hashem li, and Micha's talking about God, that God has been good to me. Ki hayali halevi l'kohen. Again, it's very hard. The word. This is a word that I picked up in the States, which I never used in England. It's a word a lot of people use: bifurcation. Bifurcation. That here, on the one hand, he's running a house of idolatry, and at the same time recognizing that it's all Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Everything is good. God is good, and he seems to be comfortable living literally in both circumstances, in both worlds. And we're going to go on. We're going to get to the end of chapter 18, because listen to this story. It gets really unbelievable. Pasuk Yud Aleph of chapter 18, part 2 of the story. Bayom Ahem Melech Yisrael. Again, we're being reminded there's still no king. Bayom Ahem Shevet Adani. Now, at this point, we're going to refocus onto another part of the Jewish people, the tribe of Dan. This is a continuation from the story of Shimshon, because Shimshon was from the tribe of Dan. So the tribe of Dan at this point has a problem, whether this is at the beginning of the period of Judges or the end. That, as I said, I don't think it makes a difference, because it's what's going to happen is really significant. Mevakesh lo nachal al hashevet. They're still looking for a place to live, a place to settle in Eretz Yisrael. So a lot of people say this obviously means that it was at the beginning of the period of Judges, but by the end, the 400 years that have passed, surely they found somewhere to live, but maybe not so clear. Whatever. As I said, that's a whole separate discussion. But what happened? They seemingly did not have a place amongst the tribes. They haven't got the place to live. So they decided we're going to do a little bit of what we call nowadays a pilot trip in Israel. We're going to send out a whole small group of people, a little bit more than the usual pilot trip, but this is 5 individuals. Chamisha anashim mikzotam anashim b'nei chayil, going to make sure that they're starker guys. They're going to go looking for a good place. Mitzara me'eshta'ol, 2 places on Route 38, which we're now. My wife's not listening, but we're now very, very comfortable with pointing out as you drive up to Beit Shemesh. Tzara ben tzara le'eshta'ol, and you see the sign on the right, and you can wave at the sign. It's very exciting. L'ragel et ha'aretz chokran. They're going to check out where they want to live. They're looking for a good space. And to do a chakira, in other words, to really, go into what they can grow there and what's going to be there. And they were told, go and do this. These 5 men went. And of course, the house of Micha, that's a stopping place. And they went there and they spent the night there. Now, what's going to happen next is, again, truly shocking. I don't know. I'm just trying to get into the head of Shmuel HaNavi writing this. Right? He must have been writing this with a lot of tears in his eyes. I can't believe he wrote this very comfortably. But the incredible thing about Tanakh, and this is a golden rule, is that if we've got a little bit of dirty laundry, we don't hide it. Right? The skeletons are out of the cupboard, as they say in the vernacular at home. We really want this to be known, so that we learn from the faults. We learn from the problems. We don't have a history which is hiding the facts. So listen to this, verse 3. It turns out that Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson was a Bissel Chazan, which it doesn't surprise me in the least, right? He had a nice voice, and they heard this young boy doing his thing in the house of Micha, whatever he was singing, and they said, "Oh, we know that kid, right? The Wunderkind, we know who he is. It's Moshe. They didn't say Moshe Rabbeinu. It just said that we know it's the Levite. So they went towards the place where he was singing. And they said, what are you doing here? We know who you are. What are you doing here? Basically, they want to know, why is he the functionary here in the house of Micha? This is what Micha did. And he employed me, and I'm now his priest. Everything for me turned out to be wonderful. The men of Dan, who knew who he was, they now come along and say, wait a minute. If you're in such a holy place, ask Hashem, right? Ask God. And of course, they're putting in a little bit of a dig at him, because they know that he's in a place of idolatry. He's not. How is he going to ask God in a place where they're serving idols? But they're digging at him. They're saying, well, maybe you can have a word with Hashem. It's a local call. We're in Israel. Where we need to go. They need to be guided as to where they need to find that place, that piece of territory where they can settle. Fine. And there's a little bit of a to and fro going on here. But Pasuk Vav. So the Kohen says, the young man, L'chul shalom. Firstly, gei gesundheit, right? I wish you luck. Nochach Hashem darkechem. Of course, he realized he couldn't ask God because he's in a house of idolatry, and he's aware. His Zayda was Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, he knows what it means to ask Hashem. But he says, "May God bless your journey." Asher telchu ba. He gives them a bracha, and that's as much as he can do. Now, what did they do? And these are locations which we see now. If you're on the Tel Aviv highway going from here to certainly from Yerushalayim to Tel Aviv, you'll recognize some of these names. It says, they came to Laish, and they found a piece of territory there, somewhere not far from Yerushalayim, right, as far as I understand, and it was very nice. Kamishpat Sidonim, and there it was occupied by Sidonim, or they lived like the people from Sidon, which is originally from Lebanon. Shoketu Botek, they're very quiet, everything is calm, it's a good place to live, right? Not too much noise, everything is beseder. And they said nothing there which will put anyone to shame, meaning it's a quiet place, they're not fighting, they're not screaming at each other. Amazing, it's Israel. And as it were, in fact, they're far away from the original Sidonim who seem to have lived there. But and they have very little to do with the people around them. It's a quiet place to live. Now, these people of the tribe of Dan, and it shows how far down the scale they went from the days of Shimshon, who was one of the great leaders of the Jewish people from the tribe of Dan. They decide to do something which is terrible. They went. Firstly, they brought back the news to the brothers who, at the moment, were living seemingly temporarily in what we call today around about IKEA, right? Sarah and Eshta'ol, somewhere in Beit Shemesh over there. And they were asked, "What are you doing here? What news do you have?" So the group of five said, we found a place and we can go and take it. And the people living there, and they're going to take it from them. It's very good. They live a beautiful thing over there. There's nice apartments there. They're told that you must be quiet. Do not. Firstly, don't be atzlanim. Don't be lazy. To inherit the land. So basically, going to take away from the group that's living in that beautiful place. They're going to take it away by force. So this is a story which on the surface looks normal till you start realizing what exactly is going on. This is one of the tribes of the Jewish people who are basically going to take away a piece of territory from another group by force. There's no melech, there's nobody controlling it, there's no mishtara, there's nothing happening here to stop them going in high-handed and doing what they want to do. And it's unbelievable. Pasuk Yud, and they told them how beautiful the place is, and it's going to be given over to you by God. So all of this is with a religious twinge to the whole thing. or tinge, if a better word. But Mokom Asher Ein Sham Machzor, it's a place without anything missing. Beautiful place, Kol Davar She'Ba'aretz, anything you want, right? And it's great. A lot of bakeries, like in where we are at the moment. Vayisur Misham Mishpachat Hadani Mitzar Mishta'osa. They sent out a whole group of people. In fact, they all picked up and left at Sarah and Eshta'ol, the tribe of Dan. Sheish Meod Ish Chagur Klei Milchama. There's a group of men ready for war. 600 men got up and started traveling towards this place where they want to live. Vayalu v'yachnu b'Kiryat Ye'arim. Kiryat Ye'arim, nowadays Telstone. Drive on the highway, you'll see it on the right as you go towards Tel Aviv, just before Shoresh. Again, these names come up again. Kiryat Ye'arim is very well known because in the book of Shmuel, it's where the ark was brought back from the Plishtim. It was taken down to Gaza and then they brought it back, and it stayed in Kiryat Ye'arim till it was transferred to Yerushalayim. I always wonder how they could do that in those days with very bad roads with a wagon and try and keep the ark on the wagon. I don't know how they did it, but they obviously did, up and down till you get to Yerushalayim from Kiryat Ye'arim. But anyway, that's what happened. So Kiryat Ye'arim is a landmark. And it was in Yehuda. And that area was the first area to be known as the area for the tribe of Dan. Till today, says Shmuel, it's still called the place of Dan. Kiryat Ye'arim, which is just a bit beyond Kiryat Ye'arim, towards Shoresh. That's where my mother-in-law lives, so it's an important place. Yud Gimel. Misham Har Ephraim, and after that they went beyond Mount Ephraim. Beit Micha, and of course, on the way, like everybody, they stopped at the house of Micha. But this is 600 men, armed to the teeth with swords and who knows what, and they're not too impressed what's going on in the house of Micha. They had the 5 who went on the initial pilot trip, to spy out the land. Laish, who went to Laish, and they said to the rest of the group, and there's 600 guys, this is serious. You know what we found in the house of Micha? All of the paraphernalia which is associated with idolatry. And the making of, these are people who are prepared to take land from other people without even batting an eyelid. They're going to come in and strong arm their way into a piece of land. But when it comes to idolatry, they're being super religious. They're saying, we found in the house of Micha all of these appurtenances of idolatry. Pesel and Masecha, the graven images, and we've got to do what we have to do, and we know what we have to do. And boy, did they go for the jugular. Listen what happened. Tetva. This is the whole group of the tribe of Dan. They went there, Beitanar Halevi, seeming the young man who was the Kohen was in a house next door. It's been set up, and he's now the priest, Beit Micha, next to the house of Micha. And they said, hello, how are you? So he looks out of the window. It's like one of these movies, and he sees all of a sudden 600 men waiting at the front door, all with their dressed for war, and he realizes we've got a bit of a problem here. And they're all from the tribe of Dan. How he knew what the tribe of Dan? I suppose he realized that they're part of that group, the original 5 from the tribe of Dan, that he knew they were from Dan. This is the rest of the Chevra. They're all together. Pasuk Yud Zayin. As I told you at the beginning, this is a wild story. The 5 men step forward. Firstly, what they decided to do is an act of confiscation. They're going to confiscate the pesel, the image, the ephod, this belt, which was again used for idolatrous purposes. And there's a story with Gidon that there was an ephod there. The eta trafim and the mannequins or whatever they were. Beta masecha and the graven image. Now the priest, you would think, tries to stop this, but he realizes 1 against 600 not going to happen, so he has to let them take it. They took their they were dressed for war, and they just went in and took everything. So they basically absolutely trashed the whole place. The house of Micha is now no longer functioning. Certainly not inside. Maybe the building was still standing, but everything inside was taken away. Pasuk Yudchet. The Elu Bao Beit Micha Vayichvet Pesal Ephod, and these are the ones that took all of this stuff. Trafim et Masecha Vayom Aleim HaKohen. Ma atem osim? So he tries to stop them, and he says, the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu, Yonatan, says to them, "What are you doing?" Vayomer lo acharesh sim yadcha al picha v'leh. Basically, they said to him, firstly, be quiet, right? There's no airs and graces in this story. They basically said to him, in no uncertain terms, Sim yadcha al picha, put your hand on your mouth. If you say anything more, then you see there's 600 guys out here, and they're going to make mincemeat of you, literally. But we're going to make you an offer. We know that you're a good Kohen, so you'll come with us, because we're on a journey. We're not going to stay here. We're actually going north, and we're going to take you with us. So instead of being Micha's Kohen, you'll be our Kohen. Hatov yotcha Kohen lebeit Ishechan, or yotcha Kohen l'shevet l'mishpacha b'Yisrael. They're basically saying to him, what do you want to be? Do you want to be the CEO of the company, or do you want to just be the manager of the local branch? So the answer is, yeah, I want to be the CEO. There's no choice. And this is what they said to him. Right? You want to be the head of the whole shebang or not? And Vayitab Posachav Lev HaKohen, he was very happy in the end. He realized a good deal, even though he realized as a consequence this was strong arm tactics in the extreme. Vayikach et ha'ifod et ha'trafim, and he took all the stuff, all the stuff of idolatry, and he came amongst the whole crowd, and they all started moving north. Vayifnu vayelchu v'yosim et ha'taf et ha'mikneh, and they started putting everything on their wagons or whatever, the children, loading up, and they're moving out. Hit them up, move them out. Pasuk Kafbet. Micha. What's Micha going to do? He comes home, he's been in the, wherever he's been, sort of sunning himself in the Dead Sea, and all of a sudden he comes back, I don't know where he was, and he sees my house is trashed, and it says that they got a distance away from the house of Micha, and the people with the house of Micha decide this is terrible. We got to get our stuff back, and they started chasing. They called to the Danites who were moving north, and they said to them, "Listen, guys, what are you doing?" And they turned around to face them. And they said to Micha, and obviously we don't know the tone of the way they spoke, but we have to assume this was pretty aggressive. What are you doing here? Why are you calling us in such a disrespectful way? You're dissing us, right? That's what they said to him. So he explained, Micha, his whole parnos has gone up, it's literally been stolen. My God, Asher Siti lakachtem et hakohen vatelchu maliot. I've got nothing left. What do you mean? What you want to know what's wrong? I'll tell you what's wrong. You stole everything that belongs to me. Wow, this is, talk about, extreme aggression. Don't raise your voice. We don't want to hear from you. Because otherwise you're going to be in trouble, right? Because these guys that are with us, obviously the spokesman, whoever he was, said that I've got a whole bunch of embittered gentlemen, anashim mori nefesh, v'asafta nafshecha v'nefesh beitecha, and if you try and stand up to us, then you will regret it. You will not be around to tell the story. That's Micha, and Micha is done for. And they started moving away. This is really the Kol Alim Gavar. The Gemara says this is the strong man wins. But that's in the Gemara. It's a whole discussion in a situation of the rule of law. This is the rule of the jungle over here. And what do? Micha saw these guys were starkers. He went home, and that's the end we hear of Micha, never to be heard of again. They took everything, including the priest, the whole deal, the whole shebang. The men of Dan took the whole thing. Firstly, they took that first piece of land, which must have been a bit further away, and they took it over. And they just killed everybody there. This is unbelievable. They even burnt down the city. Again, to make the point that, we're here, don't start with us. They basically were taking over. And this seems to have been a symptom of what was going on in the country. Very, very frightening. This is, even Kabbalah today, we can at least thank God they don't get up to this stuff. At least hopefully not. Davar ein lahem im Adam vehi ba'emek asher lebeit Rechov. They eventually go towards Tzidon, and they're actually traveling to a place called Beit Rechov. Vayivnu et ha'ir vayeshu ba, and they start building a city up there, and they dwell there. Ve'ikru shema Dan b'shem Dan aviem, and they called the town of Dan. If you look on the map today, you'll see that the area known as the area of Dan is, there are a few places I think, but one of them is right up north. I don't know I forgot the name of the waterfall. There's a very beautiful Banyas, yeah. So it's around that area, I think. Asher Yolad Yisrael, and the whole city then was named after Dan, who had been born to Jacob, Yisrael. V'olam Laish Yemenu Shana, but originally was called Laish. Now here comes the bombshell, as I said before. V'yakimu lahem b'nei Dan et hapasa. They established their image right up north, right on the boundary today, where all the action has been going on. Yonatan ben Gershon, and who was the Levi? Jonathan, the son of Gershon, ben Menashe, the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu. Unbelievable. Hu banav hayu kohanim, the Shevet Adani. They remained priests for the Danites ad yom Golot Haaretz, until Golos, until the exile. In other words, this stayed in Israel all the years of the first temple. Unbelievable. Even if there was a Beit Elokim, meaning a house of God, meaning a tabernacle in Shiloh, before the temple was built, in the north you had the Pesel Micha. It is truly bizarre. And the way that these people from Dan, I mean, again, if Shimshon was alive at this point, and I'm assuming it's happening after Shimshon's death, one can only assume that Shimshon may, with his literally physical strength, he would have been able to control them. Because what they did here is so appalling, right? It only gets, and in fact, the trouble is the next story is even worse. So I don't even want to sort of preempt it at the moment, but this is really difficult. Shmuel is saying what is going on. The Bein Adam L'Chavera, even Bein Adam L'Mokom, which we thought was going to be a something of strength, is being challenged here. And although Micha seems to have been a very hospitable guy, but in the end of the day, a whole tribe to behave in this antisocial way to an extreme is very, very disturbing. And Shmuel, I think, is giving us a clue, one of the clues to the problem of the period of Judges. That what they did, they came into Eretz Yisrael, but they came in with the view that, ich bin for sich. This is for me and not for my neighbor. We saw it right at the beginning. We saw it with Yeshua. When Yeshua dies, remember the whole story there, that there's no hesped. He dies and it's as if, move on, next. And nothing happened. And it says that there was a volcano. There was an earthquake in Eretz Yisrael because of that. Because what happened was that the people were so horrified. Well, essentially, God was horrified, but it translated to the people that they realized that, they were so self-centered about their building the land and developing the land that they didn't give proper respect to the death of Yeshua. So already the warning signs are from the beginning that Am Yisrael is here not for the others, they're here for themselves. And when I'm learning this and I'm teaching this, I remember teaching this in America, I taught it in the UK, it just rings so loud that, and I would say from the negative, we should learn the positive. The fact is, Eretz Yisrael today and our existence in Eretz Yisrael is based on chesed. It's so much about the way that we interact with each other in a positive way that Shmuel today, I think, would say, okay, that was then, but today, Baruch Hashem, this is one of the great merits that we have living here, that we do care for each other. All right, sometimes when you go to the Knesset, it is a bit challenging to see people caring for each other when they're screaming at each other at the same time, but reality is that today, thank God, at least I think we've learned this lesson. However, we can explain the bifurcation in terms of the Pesa, which according to the Midrash, if you want to go midrashically, I know you're not quite comfortable with that, but it doesn't matter. The Midrash says that this Pesa, the original Pesa, came out of Egypt, and it was brought by the Jews through the desert. It was at Mount Sinai, so go figure that. And they were sort of standing at the back, and when God said they have no other images, they kind of sort of maybe they put a blanket over it. I don't know what they did. It's unbelievable. And I just read to you just one paragraph because I'm almost finished here. And the question which this Rabbi Levi, who I quote very often, very wonderful teacher in Yerushalayim, passed away a number of years ago. He brings here from Rabbi Dessler, one of the great writers and Bali Musa, and he basically wants to understand what's going on here. And he says, I'll just read this very short paragraph. He says, "In Avodah Zarah, the Pesach Micha, lo hayta avodah zarah pshuta." That's the understatement of the year. He says this was not a simple idolatry. What was going on here? Sharei in Kol Yisrael of Avra avodas of the avodah zarah zu derech Yam Suf shenikra banei. So if they brought it across the Red Sea to come with them, well, I'm doing mal if they have Sinai and they brought it to Mount Sinai even. Shezachu sham legilui shchina panim panim, and they saw God face to face. Va'od haytav sharu kediri chazal she'anan ha'ma'aracha mishila. And there's a rabbinic statement that the smoke that came up from the Pesel, Micha, and the Nur, when they did their idolatrous practice, that smoke blew towards the middle of Israel, and the smoke that was coming from the korbanot of the tabernacle in Shiloh, the two, it sounds like the Iron Dome, the two lines of smoke met somewhere in the middle. Unbelievable. And therefore he says, "Ve'ein safek she'devarim bagab." There's something going on here which is really hard to understand. And in the end, we have to say that they, and this is something I'm going to leave you with, and I don't even know if I can explain it in any logical way, that there seems to have been in the early days a mindset of so many people who came out of Egypt, I'm assuming, that you could serve God with a human image through, as you say, derech, the way of serving God, through an image which would be a physical image. Now, of course, for us, that's Christianity. That's what they do. And we don't do that. We're chas v'shalom. We mustn't do that. But the reality was, once upon a time, that's the ego. This is according to the Kuzari, he says. Kuzari, very famous book of Jewish philosophy, he argues that the whole story of the calf was that they were serving God through this image, meaning that they wanted to connect to God. Moshe had disappeared. He hadn't come down the mountain. They needed a Mora Derech. They needed someone to guide them. And they thought the golden calf was going to do it. And it wasn't necessarily a calf being a rebellion against God at the beginning, but of course, as soon as it became idolatrous, meaning they worshipped the calf and forgot about God, then of course it was absolutely forbidden. So the story of Pesach Micha, the suggestion is that it wasn't destroyed as the golden calf was ground up into dust, right? It got rid of it. This Pesach was kept around because it wasn't absolutely the negative way that we may understand it, like the golden calf. There seems to have been some element in it which kept it going, and I can't explain it. I don't know. To me, it's idolatry 101. End of discussion. But seemingly not, and it was around. You saw the pasuk at the end till the galut, till the exile. It was kept going, and again, what Rabbi Levi says at the end, he says, "Gamim lo hevanu et achet l'cholom ko." Even if we don't understand the sin in the depth of what it means, harei nisinu lefachot l'sabet ha'ozem ma sheyachol lishma. We've tried to explain it. This is what I followed his line over here because that's what I've tried to do. But firstly, what was Micha's mistake? He thought you could worship God with an image, and that is not the way to go. Shel Levi, what about the Levi, who turns out to be the grandson of Moshe? Shel Shevet Dan, what about the tribe of Dan that adopted it as their religious symbol? God help us. Umadua Amad Pesel Zeh Yomim Rabim B'tochechi Beit Yisrael, and it survived all those years amongst the Jews. Bottom line is that, as I said, it doesn't really matter when it happened, at the beginning of the period of Judges or the end, but it does show the symptoms of decay. Right? This is only 2 or 3 generations after coming into Eretz Yisrael, at the beginning of the book of Judges. By the time you get to the end of the book of Judges, as I said, you've gone through nearly 400 years. It's like today talking about the Mayflower, for those who know all about that. It's a long time ago. But at the same time, the reality is that this is something which is so challenging. It's very hard to explain. I mean, I remember trying to teach this, and, we got into big discussions, really trying to understand the depth of what's going on, the mindset. But the mindset clearly is wrong. It's certainly not Jewish in the traditional sense. And it's one of the clues of what exactly was going on. Why, in the end, they needed a king. They need someone to take control. So it's very simple. So that the tribe of Dan can never go strong-arm their way across the country. Oh, we're going to take this bit, and then we're going to go to here, and we're going to be there, and we're going to have our own symbol and our own almost our own version of Judaism, if you want to call it that. All of this is really, really unbelievable. And all I can say is, Mitzvah Hashem, in 4 weeks' time, when we learn the next chapter, next couple of chapters, it gets worse. That's all I can say at the end. It really does get worse. Without going into too many details, it is truly, truly shocking. But as again, Michlal Lavat Hashemehem, from the negative, let's learn the positive. Thank God today we see, I mean, this is one of the things that's happened in the last year, the explosion. It's always here, Chesed, but the explosion of Chesed in Eretz Yisrael is unbelievable. And it's something very special. I mean, Nebuch, we're having to go through what we have to go through, and this is so terrible, but the Chesed that's come out of it, truly remarkable. And I'll leave you with those thoughts. Thank you, everybody. Any comments? Anyone want to chip in at this point? I hope I haven't stunned you into silence. Rhonda teaches this stuff, so she knew what was coming. But for those who've never heard the story before, it's there. Well, we don't hide these stories, but we're certainly not too proud of them either. Yeah, please.
Just a couple of comments.
Sure.
For people who take the story out of context, it's hard to understand. But if you put it in the context of Shoftim, then you understand that at that point, if we're assuming that this is the end of the period of the judges, you can then understand what has happened to the Jewish people, because like you said, it's like a wave. The judges were up, the people were down. The difficulties we assimilated, the immorality, because we did not listen to God to get rid of the people of Canaan.
It all comes back to that.
It comes back to bite us.
It does.
It comes back over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And if we don't listen to God in the entire sentence of what he tells us to do, and we take it upon ourselves to make certain decisions, no, we're not going to do it this way, we're going to do it sort of this way, then we're in trouble. We're always in trouble.
And the script is always there. The script is always there.
We live it now.
Yeah.
We live the same script now.
Yeah.
Are we making a mistake now, trying to live with the Arabs who are part of Eretz Israel?
I'm not going to get into
that. I don't want to get into that. This is biblical history.
I'm talking about what we learn. The longer we have history, the less we learn from it, basically. Yeah. And what happens also, another thing that will give us a understanding as you go into Shmuel from this story is that the tribe of Dan that was assigned by Yehoshua to live on the Mediterranean wasn't happy there.
Right.
And they go, and that's part of the motivation for them to go north to find this very beautiful area, that's already been, inhabited by these very peaceful people.
Right.
And they say, well, we're going to take it and kill everybody, which just baffles me. However, when we read in Shmuel, when it says that everyone thought Shmuel was terrific from Dan to Beersheba. Well, people don't understand that this story established Dan as the most northern point in Eretz Yisrael. And at that time, it was part of Lebanon. That was, near Tyre and Sidon.
Yeah.
And that becomes the geography of Jewish history. So a lot of times throughout text, it says from Dan to Beersheba, because that was the biblical land. And when you look at ancient maps, you see that Dan is up there, and it's still represented on the Mediterranean.
Correct. And just the whole mindset of the way they went about things is so shocking.
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre.
And
it's shocking.
And what was going on that caused these people to do such treacherous, horrible things?
Yiddish, fazich. It was all fazich.
Good enough leadership.
Yeah, it is a leadership issue.
They put up this idol as almost a go-between between them and God.
Yeah.
They didn't have the leadership. They weren't trying to go against God. They were trying to find a connection.
Yeah.
Might be the wrong,
Right.
but we're still doing that today.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we look at Jews around the world,
Abria.
that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're still trying to make the connection.
Yeah. I did
in their
side. I did get into this a little bit.
You're right. I think that anyone that lives in Chutz La'aretz is living with one foot in the secular world and one foot in the Jewish world.
Right.
And it's a very hard balance,
Correct.
because while it may not be a physical pestle, that they're worshiping, they're in the non-Jewish world and they're doing things.
I don't even think it's a place that they're in the non-Jewish world. I think they haven't got the connection and they're trying to make a connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
maybe they think they're going the right way to make a connection.
Yeah.
We think we're going the right way to make a connection.
Yeah. But again, the script is there. And when you start cutting the corners and the edges and whatever, then that's where the trouble starts. And this is a powerful story. My gosh.
Unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And
But the next
one's worse. To be continued. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.